tonight at 7:30. This is KV4UP. Name here is Scott. And as we do every Sunday night, except for last Sunday night when I wasn't here, this is the time for Greensboro Amateur Radio Association Technical Forum. This is I can speak. This is the W4GSO repeater. In case you didn't know where you were, or you didn't know where your radio was set. And if you don't know what the Tech Forum is a time for you to share projects you've been working on, give information about upcoming events, ask questions. If you have a project that you're working on, it's a great time to ask questions and get some information from others. And yeah, I just love this time. It's a great time. I learn a lot, and I know a lot of other people do too. So it's always a lot of fun. If you're not a ham, or if you want to upgrade your ticket and get up in the general extra class, there's a VE session the second Saturday every month at Hinshaw United Methodist Church on Gate City Boulevard here in Greensboro. Testing starts at 9 in the morning, and if you go to that VE session, you want to make sure you bring, well, I think it's the same in all of them. You need to bring two forms of ID. One of them has to be a photo ID, and they don't have a copy machine there, so they need to have a copy of your license. David, AJ4TF, is the one who coordinates those sessions at Hinshaw, and if you're going to want to take the exam there, you want to let him know. You can email him at aj4tfarl.net to let him know that you'll be there. It helps him know he'll be around. And the next session for that will be Saturday, February 13th, because we just had one yesterday. Let's see if David's around, and if he is, how the VE session went yesterday. David, are you out there tonight?
And 4, BYU.
Well, Roy, it's just as good. Do you know how things went? How are things going with you?
Well, I'm looking at my emails. He sent it. Hang on a minute. Let me look in my other box.
Well, while he's doing that, we'll come back to him in just a second. Let me just let you know there's also a VE session at the High Point Red Cross building on Phillips Avenue in High Point on the last Saturday of every month. That one starts at 10 a.m. David AJ4TF is also the lead VE for that, so if you want to go to that one in High Point, you can email him at the same email address, aj4tf@arl.net. The next session for that location will be on January the 30th, so you have a couple weeks to get studied up for that, and there's a good group of guys down there. All right, Roy, have you found what you need?
No, evidently I may have erased it, but I know there was about 3 that got their tech, and Tommy, I cannot remember her last name. I believe she joined the club, but Tommy got her general. And if I do, I will holler break in a minute. But let me look. And for BYU.
KB1P.
Cool. Tom probably knows. What happened yesterday, Tom?
This is KB1P. We had 5 techs and 1 general, and Tommy did get her general, so it was 5 techs, 1 general, KB1P.
Okay, I got it now. Ready?
Sure, go for it. Tom just let us know there were 5 techs and 1 general, but maybe you have a little bit more information. Let her rip.
Richard Green, Burlington, got his tech. Robert Holmes, Greensboro, got his tech. Stephen K-A-R-R-I-K-E-R, Salisbury, he got his tech. Tommy, K4MTL, she got her general. Steve Russell, Salisbury, got his tech. Address change. So if you got all those, that's it.
Wow, well thanks guys, that's great. That's really neat. 5 new techs and a new general, that's fantastic. Seems like a good haul to me. So hopefully some of them will be around here listening tonight, and maybe be around here next Sunday night. Get their new radios fired up and rocking and rolling. That's really great. I'm so glad to hear it. And thanks Tom for letting us know, and thanks Roy for getting us the names and everything. I really appreciate that. All right, let's see here. Let's move on. I got the High Point Red Cross VE session. Don't forget after this forum at 9 o'clock on the same repeater as the News and Information Net featuring Amateur Radio Newsline. Patrick K2CPR will be the host for that. So be here at 9 o'clock in a little while, and we'll see what's going on in the world of amateur radio. I also wanted to mention, before we get on to check-ins and everything, that our meeting on January the 25th this month, the GARA meeting at Captain Bill's, is going to feature Bob Heil, K9EID. If any of you ever watch Ham Nation or know about Heil Sound, or the headsets or the microphones or earphones or all those different things that are out there that are so good in amateur radio land, Bob Heil, the one who invented most of that stuff, will be with us, joining us via Skype. So that'll be fun. We're going to test out the setup tomorrow night and make sure everything is up and running and ready to go so that we can have a good visit with him on the 25th. So you'll want to be there. That's going to be good. All right. Me say this is KB4UP with the Greensboro Amateur Radio Association Tech Forum. Our topic tonight is in honor of Fred, KB4PI. He recently got a new amplifier, HF amplifier. So our topic tonight is amplifiers. And I know a bunch of you have played around with them. I've seen some of the stuff either in pictures or, just kind of seen what you guys are doing. But this doesn't have to be about HF amplifiers. If you are really into VHF or UHF or microwave or whatever, moon bounce, satellite, we can talk about that stuff too. I don't want to leave anybody out, but I don't personally have one. I would love to have one. I don't have one yet, but I'm just, maybe someday, it's a step you eventually take. But let's see, you know what, there have been a number of horror stories about things people have done with their amplifiers, plug things in the wrong way, or, sent signals in the wrong place or whatever. If you have some tips and tricks, nice things, bad things, things to avoid, whatever, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I haven't got anything because I have one, so there you go, I'm simple. Alright, so let's start out by taking check-ins. We'll take mobile and low power station check-ins first, and then we'll move on to the rest of the list. So if you're running mobile and you're going to be a short timer tonight, or if you're running low power, call forum control to check in the tech forum now.
Forum control.
Says also.
Here is Alpha Juliet 4 Tango Foxtrot mobile.
And for BYU, sitting still, but waiting for them to bring me a fresh cup of coffee out. In line, David.
B-Way 2, BAJ, portable at McDonald's.
Alright, good to hear you guys. Thanks for joining us tonight. David, we were looking for you a little bit ago, and Roy and Tom filled us in on how the V session went yesterday. Sounds like you guys had a great time, had a good haul of new techs come through there. Thanks for doing that. I appreciate the work and the time and effort you put into that. Sounds like it was well worth it yesterday. So we'll start with you since you're at the top of the list. How are things going tonight, David?
Good evening, Scott and Roy. I'm almost there. You beat me. Anyways, we had five new techs and one new general. It was a good session. Everybody passed. A couple got 100%, but they don't put your score on the license, so it don't matter. And I don't know what the topic is. So back to you, AJ4TF.
right, well, let me tell you what the topic is, and then you can let me know if you want to chime in before we move on to Roy. That topic is amplifiers. Could be HF, could be VHF, UHF, horror stories, things to avoid, things to do, things to look for if you, things that you've experienced. I don't have one, so I'm not going to be much help, but I want to hear from all of you, so that's what the topic is, David.
Okay, well, the HF amplifier that I have is the KPA 100, which is the 100 watt amplifier that goes on the K2, which takes it from a QRP rig to a 100 watt rig. Yeah, I guess the only story I have on that thing is I had it's actually one of the voltage regulator transistors. Apparently, it's a TO220 package with a tab on it. Apparently, the tab shorted to the screw that held it down and shorted out the bias circuit to the main power transistors on that, and it burned a trace off the board. And what's interesting though on that, even though the transistors were not getting any bias, they were still kind of working. But I started, this was actually happened during field day a few years ago, and it still was putting out power, but had somebody say that the signal sounded very bad. So it was close to the end of the day, so it didn't matter. Kept using it. But when I got back home, took it apart, found that burned trace on the board. The first symptom was it wouldn't put out power on only one band. It was weird. It was just 15 meters was down, and that's the only band that was down. So I took it apart, found the burned trace, repaired it, and everything's back to normal after that. So it was kind of a weird problem. Had to call HackRF a couple times to help sort that out. But anyway, as far as bigger amplifiers, don't have one, can't comment. AJ4TF Mobile.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm glad you were able to get that sorted out. I'm glad you have the knowledge to be able to fix that, and I'm also glad that HackRF seems like they're a really good company to deal with stuff about that. You know, I hear lots of good things about those guys, so that's really neat. And yeah, it's strange that it was only on one band, but hey, I guess I deal with all sorts of strange situations, not exactly like that, but with electronic stuff every day. Nothing really surprises you anymore, In any case, I'm glad it's back up and running, and that you're back up and running, and that you're at full capacity now. So that's great. Thanks for sharing that and for joining us tonight. All right, on to Roy, N4BYU. Roy, did you get your coffee yet, or what?
Yeah, they forgot me, but I backed up to the window, and she smiled and gave me my cup, so I've got it. Cruising down the road toward Wilmington. Not going there, but that's the direction I'm going. Almost home. Used to have a heat kit. I think it was a SP200, which was, I don't know, 600-700 watts. I don't remember. I know it was a good one, and don't even know who I sold it to. And there was a gentleman that died, and the Hamfest, they kept pestering me to bid on the radio and amplifier. So I made what I thought was a ridiculous offer. They took me up on it. So anyway, friend of mine, I told him that he could have it for what I had in it, sight unseen, or I would check it out and double the price. And I told him I really thought it was good. He got it, he loved it, and as far as I know, he still got it. The good one, the one that I got now, there's a gentleman died over in Orange County, and I went over to get his crank-up fold-over, and we saw this funny-looking thing sitting in the floor, and a friend of mine knew a whole lot more than I did. He said, buy it, get it, offer. And anyway, I made her an offer. She took me up. Took the tube out. The tube is a 31000Z. 31000Z. And we thought the capacitors went out a couple of years later. And we replaced them. That didn't do it. It was the transformer. And if anybody's ever heard of Peter Dahl, D-A-W-L, I believe they are out of business now. He is. But anyway, I bought a new transformer. Runs about 3,500 volts to it. So that's about it. Sits on the floor. Got a big power supply, big old tube. And just waiting for me to turn it on again. N4, BYU.
Wow, Roy, that's great. So the moral of the story is, if you want a nice amplifier, wait for somebody to die. And then maybe you'll find one with a big old 1000Z tube in it. That's really good. I like that. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Sounds fun to me. Sounds like a lot of fun. All right, on to Joe, W2A2BAJ at McDonald's. Joe, what's going on? How are you doing tonight?
Hi, Scott and the members. W2BAJ. Well, just got out of church and came down here for a hamburger and some of their stale French fries. But gonna head home and go get some rest. I don't do much in ham radio anymore, Scott. I really can't add too much except if somebody asks a question that I have the answers to. I've got a couple of 2001 amplifiers that still belong to me, but they're somewhere on Long Island with power supplies that have 4 handles on each supply for 4 people to move them. Anyway, I like to just get the amplifier because that can be run even at lower power and do a nice job. PL 175As, which are basically Amprex type tubes, but Penta made them anyway. I don't have much more. Just gonna head home and get some rest. I'm not doing as well as I'd like to be, but I think those days are gone forever. Thanks for recognizing me, Scott, and all the people over there. W2BAJ here, portable at McDonald's, putting it back to net control.
All right, Joe, this is KV4UP Scott with the Tech Forum. No problem at all, and thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. It sounds like those amps are a lot of fun when you had them up and running. It would be fun to get those things out someday, if you can figure out a way to get them down here. But you know what? Sometimes just the logistics are challenging. But thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. All right, let's move on to the rest of the check-ins and get everybody else in here so we can keep moving along. By the way, I didn't mention this before, but to check in, here's the procedure for those of you who may be new techs listening along. Call forum control, that would be me. You can just say my call sign or forum control. Unkey after you say that and listen to make sure you're not doubling with someone else. Doubling is when you're talking on the repeater at the same time as someone else is. And assuming nobody else is speaking at the same time as you, then give your call sign and give your name so that I know what your name is. And I'll mark those down and we'll go down the list and see what everybody else has going on. So that's the procedure. Call forum control, just say forum control, unkey, listen, nobody, say your call sign and your name. There you go. We're going to start out by, we'll go forward like we normally do tonight through the alphabet. So we'll take check-ins by the first letter, the suffix of your call sign. That's the letter after the number in your call sign. So let's start out with taking check-ins for suffixes alpha through golf. If you want to check in the forum tonight, call forum control now.
Forum control. This is Whiskey 8 Charlie Charlie Whiskey, and I may be calling out of turn. I lost track where you were.
Well, John, you were exactly right. We were out at Alpha through golf, so you were in the exact right spot, and sounds like maybe you're the only one in that group, because you're the only one who called, so there you go. I'm sure some other people will show up a little later. Let's go to the second group. The second group is, let's see, Hotel Through Papa. Hotel Through Papa, if you want to check into the technical forum, call forum control now.
Forum control. Please check in Kilo Mike 4 Hotel X-Ray Victor, Paul in Northeast Guilford County. Good evening, Scott.
KV4UP, WF4JCK, Chris in Greensboro. Good evening.
Forum control. Please check in Kilo Bravo 1 Papa, Tom in Oak Ridge.
Sounding great tonight, and thanks for joining us. Chris, same, sounding excellent. W4JCK, I appreciate you being here. And Tom, it's a pleasure as always. KB1P, thanks for the information earlier and for being here tonight. All right, let's get the last group in, and that would be Quebec through Zulu. If you want to check into the tech forum, and the suffix to your call sign starts with Quebec through Zulu, call forum control now.
KV4UP. Please check in AJ4TW Cameron and Highline.
Right, Cameron, good to hear you, man. Thanks for joining us tonight. AJ4TW. It's a pleasure as always. All right, let's see here. Let's do the whole alphabet, Alpha through Zulu. If you want to check into the forum, call forum control now. All right, no worries. We'll see if anybody else joins us later on, see if they come around once we get moving a little bit. All right, let's go back to the top of the list with John, W8CCW. We were having a little bit of a discussion on the Hangout about amplifiers because of Fred's a little while ago and the stuff that entails them. I can tell you that even though I don't have an amplifier, the things that I've noticed are, and some of this is from running mobile, honestly, when you're sitting at home, not having an amp isn't such a big deal. But when you're working with compromised antennas, sometimes that's when having extra power will help if your antenna's not very good. If you have a good antenna, a lot of times that will make up for not having a lot of power. But some of the antennas when you get to lower bands like 40 or 80, I don't think there's much of a way you're going to do 160 mobile. But having some power there would help, or at least the guys who are working those bands, I should say, at any time of the day, when that particular band may not be working well otherwise, are doing it running power. So that's kind of what I've noticed. That's my little observations, but let's see what other people think. John, how's it going? W8CCW, what are you thinking tonight?
Okay, Scott. Well, I'm probably the worst guy to ask about amplifiers. I had a gift choice a while back, several years ago. The XYL wanted to buy a special gift, and it may have been the 50th wedding anniversary or something like that. But I have an Ameritron AL80B, which actually I haven't turned it on in a couple of years, I don't believe. But I have decent antennas, and most of the time I would rather be able to switch frequencies and bounce around. And one more thing, the tune does not fit well there. If I were going to do it again, I might be better off to get a solid state amp that did not require tuning. And on the other hand, maybe if I'm going to ignore it, I ought to stay away from solid state. They are more fragile. But I have it. It works. I don't seem to have a lot of need for it. I was considering getting rid of it, and I decided I better hang on to it a while until see how things shake out in the next year or so. But the AL-ADB hasn't been used much, but it hasn't caused any trouble either. W8CCW.
Well, that's interesting, John. I think that you bring up a point that is probably something that a lot of people don't think of, is that, you know, of course you're going to have this thing, but it's going to take more feeding and care and maintenance, and it's going to take you a little bit longer just to be able to use it because of the other procedures you have to go through to get things working right, tuned up right. And as a general rule, this is something that we've kind of discovered over the past few days. You know, you have to have a tuner that will work with the power that you're putting out of that thing. You have to know how to use the tuner. You have to know how to use the amp, which is part of the reason I think you get one, just because it's fun to learn how to do all that stuff, of course. But sometimes you look at the thing, you don't really realize that this peripheral stuff is going to end up going around it. But I think it'd still be fun anyway. And you know, you may find that you have that amp, and someday you look at it and you think to yourself, I haven't touched that in a while. It'd be fun to just to fire it up and see how she goes. And so there you go. Good for you. I'm glad you have that, and that sounds like a lot of fun. All right, let's go over to Paul, KM4HXV. Paul, how are things going tonight? What are you up to?
Good evening, Scott, and everybody on the net. Oh, just sitting here watching these poor old Redskins make a mess of themselves, and that's that. But it's funny you bring up this subject. I was working in Winston a couple weeks ago, and stopped in and saw Mike over there at his old radio store at lunch, and we had this discussion. They were talking about it, and you know, at some time, hopefully, when I get my tower up later down the road, I might pursue an amp. But he said the biggest thing he's always run into is people don't know how to operate them. They end up doing damage, or they just don't tune them up properly. That's the biggest thing he sees with them. But for right now, I don't think I have any use for one. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I still got a lot to learn with what I got sitting here at the radio desk. So I don't think I need an amp right now, but hopefully down the road I might get into something like that. But it's a very good subject, and I appreciate you bringing it up to you. You know, one other thing, let me drop. One other thing they got in discussion with that I found fascinating and done some research on was, and some of y'all may have heard of him, I'm sure Roy may even knew him, was Zach Reynolds from the Reynolds family, who was a huge ham operator. And they showed me some pictures over there of his amps, monster amps, and his equipment was unreal. Of course, he had all the money in the world to play with, so I guess you can do that kind of stuff. They said the FCC was on him all the time about over-transmitting, but very interesting. Well, that's all I got tonight, Scott, so we'll go hand it back to you. This is KM4HXV.
N4, BYU.
Go ahead, Breaker.
Didn't say breakity break, good buddy. Yeah, I did not know Zach, but I think he had radio, amp, antenna for every band. Something that Paul said there, I wanted to throw out. I was listening to 40 earlier today, and the guy was talking about, I don't know, he was running 11,000 million watts. And he was talking about, you need to put up a 1,000-foot tower and run a G5 RV. Before you start spending money on a amp, you need to have an antenna. You might be running 1,500 watts, and they hear you around the world. But if you can't hear them, it ain't no good. So spend your money on an antenna, and once you got a good antenna, then start looking at amps, unless somebody gives you one, of course. And for BYU.
Thanks, Roy. That's great, and thanks, Paul. That's an interesting story about Zach Reynolds. I hadn't heard of him, so that's pretty neat. You just enlightened me a little bit. And yeah, Roy, I agree. You know, I don't know. I kind of see this as a bit of a dichotomy. Of course, most of us are probably stuck in the middle. Some of us do QRP, which is very low power, and because there's challenge to that, of course, you know, you have to have your antenna set up just right, and your radio has to have a good receiver, and you have to be able to. There's so many things that go into doing QRP work, and then I think, you know, running an amp can be a lot of fun too. Of course, I think a lot of guys using for rag twos are talking around the country, and they want to make sure, regardless of what the band conditions are, they can talk to their buddies on 80 meters or whatever, so they run power for that. But it's something new to learn too. There's a lot of little ins and outs about it. But I agree with you. Unless you find an excellent deal on an amplifier, like someone we know who's having a lot of fun this weekend, yeah, having a good antenna would definitely help. And yeah, that works the same way for pretty much any radio. If you can't hear, then having a bunch of power is not going to help regardless. So hearing is of primary importance. So thanks for that. All right, on to Chris, W4JCK. Chris, how are you doing tonight? What's going on?
KB4UP, W4JCK. Good evening, Scott. Everybody else on the net. Oh, whoa, amplifiers. I'm highly opinionated on that subject. Of course, let me check first. I'm on a different radio tonight. Is the audio, everything sounding okay?
Oh yeah, man, you're full quieting. You sound really good. Yeah, I don't have any problem understanding hearing you. Not a single bit.
Okay, good. This is actually the first time I've transmitted with this radio on an antenna. I've had it on the bench in a dummy load checking it out, but this is actually the first time I've got on the air. On the amplifiers, yeah, I'll say up front, I'm a big proponent of squeezing every watt you can down the wire. A lot of people don't agree with that. I've had amps since 1985. The first little amp I got was an Ameritron, an AL84. They don't make it anymore, but that's back during the time when they made a bunch of amps, and they stuck TV sweep tubes in them. This particular amp that I had the 6MJ6s. And you don't really want to have to retube that now, because sweep tubes, TV sweep tubes, are like $65, $75, $80 a piece. But I still have that little amp. It's actually sitting under the table on the HF shack in there. I got it out around 2000, 2001, and replaced the electrolytics and such in the power supply, and finally put the 10-meter mod in it, which that was back about the time you had to send a copy of your ham license in to get when they first started all that business, to get 10 meters. Of course, all it was adding a wire from the band switch and soldering it to a tap on the coil. But that little amp still works. You can squeeze about 400 watts out of it, and I can tell you from experience, back then, it made a significant difference. But the key to it, as it is with pretty much any amplifier, and it's been mentioned, is taking the time to understand it. You know what it's doing. Solid state amps aren't too bad, except you've got to really put in an effort to maintain that 50 ohm load into the back of those, because there's not a whole lot of variation that those amps like to see. Some of the more expensive ones have a little greater tolerance for a non-50 ohm, but they are convenient. I had an ALS 600 for a few years back around the turn of the century. Didn't have automatic band switching, but it certainly was convenient hopping from one band to another with no tune-up. Going back to the AL84, like I say, it's 30 years old now, and still got the original tubes in it. I've had to go in and replace the plate caps in it. Those deteriorated from heat over time, but it actually still works pretty good. I haven't used it now in probably more than 10 years. But it was a great little amp because at that time my wife and I had just upgraded, and I'd gotten back on the air after being away for a few years. But I won't disagree with the antenna point of view. The thing I've noticed, though, having been away actually for again about another 7 or 8 years and getting back into it, is how much the cost of antennas has risen, along with the cost of rotators. It's just amazing now, what a little 3-element tri-bander costs and what it costs to get a decent rotator to turn it. And given the performance nowadays of most of the modern receivers, I suspect even with a typical off-center fed dipole, most people can hear a lot more than they can get back to if they've got a fairly modern rig. And I'm a big believer in, if you can't get but 200 watts down the wire versus 100, today with modern receivers, that can be the difference between working a piece of DX and never being heard. And one of the little chestnuts that always gets pulled out is like, oh, if you get 400 or 500 watts out, you're only going to be improved your signal by 1 S unit. And all that's tied to some old business from back in the 60s with Collins gear running AM, and they calibrated their S meters at 6 dB per S unit, and that seems to have way outlived itself. That whole concept has absolutely no relevancy today to modern receivers, and certainly none whatsoever to single sideband. It's with sideband, it's whether anybody can hear you. It really doesn't make any difference, what you look like on an S meter, and what you look like on an S meter is going to depend on what somebody's got their AGC set for. So anyway, I'm just real opinionated about that. I've since sold my ALS 600. I picked up one of the Ameritron AL800H's, got the 4-tuber there. And shortly after I got it, there's an excellent set of information on that amp I think the guy's call sign is W8JI. And if you look that up, you go over there and you can spend about an hour and a half reading through all the information over there. He was involved in the design of that amp. And given its lower price, I think it's one of the more popular ones that are out there. Whenever I go over to eHam and somebody's got a picture of their station, there's always an 811 in the picture sitting in there. I think there's probably half the hams in the country have got one of those amps. I don't know. But again, the care and feeding, if you learn how to use the amp, you don't try to push the amp, because if you look back over the history of ham radio amplifiers, especially tube amps, the manufacturers have always designed those amps on the hairy edge. I've got a book that's got old transmitters and amps in it, and you'll see people who sold amps that's got 2 572Bs in it, just 2, and they're calling that a 1200 watt amp. So they would jack the plate voltage up on that thing and tell you to drive the heck out of it. And tubes will take a lot of abuse for a while, and then it starts to pile up, and then your tubes go. And nowadays, if you lose your tubes, it's expensive. So anyway, I'm a big proponent of amps. I've generally had an HF amp pretty much ever since when I got back into it. I got my license in 77 and was gone a while. Then got married. My wife said, yeah, I'll get a ham license. So we were both on in 84 and 85. And I pretty much had an HF. I can get back to, because I've never had a big tower. I've never had a multi-element Yagi. I think monsters up there sitting on top of it, but I don't actually have $10,000, so I'll spend my $800 and get my amplifier and work a lot more stations for a lot less money. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, KV4UP, W4JCK.
All right, Chris, that's great. That's fascinating. I'm glad you're here to talk about all that tonight. Sounds like you have a lot of experience that we can all draw from. So, I really appreciate all of that. What was I going to say? There was something I was going to say. There was some sort of strange double. I think it was a double on your transmission there for just a second. It didn't really cut into anything you were saying, but yeah, that's great. Man, that's a lot of information to process, and I really appreciate you letting us know, because you know, a lot of that stuff I don't have any experience with. I just like sitting here and listening to you talk about it and learning, so that in the future maybe I could, if I ever get one, I don't screw it up. I was thinking to myself, I know one of the things I was thinking to myself is that one of the fun things about learning about tube gear like that is it kind of gets you a little bit more in, you know, in my opinion, it kind of gets you a little bit more in tune with what exactly you're doing. It's not quite so automatic. There's a little bit more manual effort that has to go into it. And you know, I started out, and I still have sitting here, I don't use it very often, but I started out on a Swan 500CX that has the sweep tubes in there, and I just read so much about tubes and how they work when I got this thing, as first radio I got, and I just, because I wanted to understand, and I just learned so much about it. You know, I still have a long ways to go, but like I say, I feel like you kind of get a little bit more in tune with how the rig works and all the different little idiosyncrasies of it. So that's excellent information. Thank you for sharing that. All right, up to Oak Ridge with Tom, KB1P. How's it going, Tom? What's going on?
This is KB1P, Tom in Oak Ridge. Hello to everybody on the net, and thank you for running the net. You're doing an excellent job. I don't have much interest in amps. I'm happy with what I'm doing, and happy with my antenna system I have now, so I can't comment much. It's interesting to hear everybody's opinion, but I still don't think I'll ever get an amp. Back to you, KB1P.
No problem, Tom. This is KB4UP with the Tech Forum. Yeah, I don't think everybody's cut out for one. As a matter of fact, you know, for some reason, I don't know why, HF amps, they kind of have a draw for me. I mean, there's something about it that I like. I just like tubes, vacuum tubes, first of all. I don't know why, but something about VHF and microwave amps, I don't know, that's kind of interesting to me too. I don't think many people do that, and I don't know, it doesn't seem to be really big around here, but you know, having some sort of FM competition or whatever, something about that, it seems like the tolerances are a bit tighter, and you have to be even more careful for some reason. So who knows? Maybe someday I'll try to figure that out too. But I'm there with you, man. I hear what you're saying. All right, let's go down to High Point. Cameron, AJ4TW. What's going on, Cameron? How you doing tonight?
Hey, good evening, Scott. Is my signal a little better now?
Yeah, you sound pretty good. There's just a little bit of hiss on there, but you're pretty strong. You sound fine.
All right, cool. I checked in with half a watt from High Point on the HT, and now I'm running 2.5 watts. So just trying not to overwhelm the receiver that I'm recording the net with. Yeah, I have a AL811, the base model one, with 3 811 tubes in it, and I've had a lot of fun with it. Let's see. AJ4TW. I've made some mistakes with it and burned up some tubes. The biggest thing is basically getting used to remembering that I have an amp, and work some DX on 20 or 40 or somewhere, and okay, that's good. Now I'm gonna jump up and try to get this guy on another band, and I even forgot that I was running the amp. Didn't switch bands, didn't turn off the transmit PDT switch, didn't do anything and just started calling another guy on another band with the amp tuned up in the wrong place, and eventually you notice your SWRs are wrong and all this. But I beat it pretty hard and end up having to replace the tubes in it. I guess the big thing is be careful, remember that it's there, and and careful tuning it up. Once you learn how to do it, it's not that hard. For me, it's just kind of remembering that I got it. And I'll say, so the big thing that I really enjoyed about having the 811, it only does, realistically 300, 350 watts on sideband, I think. Maybe, a little more on peaks, but it's not that strong, but it does make a big difference. When I did stuff like K2J for 13 colonies and W1AW Stroke 4 North Carolina Centennial, it makes a difference when you're running a pileup. It's nice to be able to be loud enough that when all the knuckleheads are not listening, you can the guys that are paying attention and doing the right thing can still hear you over the top of the guys that don't know the first rule of DXing or HF work, which is listen, listen, listen. So that's really handy for that. Trying to do that with 100 watts is not so great. I mean, it works, you can do it, but it takes a lot more work and patience. But yeah, so I like it a lot. I guess you remember that if you step up like Fred is dealing with, he's stepping up to 800 watt amp, then he needs a tuner that can take the power. So now, you buy an amp, you got to buy a tuner and all that stuff. So that's how it goes, I guess, with ham radio, but it's fun. Let's see, so I was going to say one other thing about it. Antennas. Roy is right. I think antenna, and then amp. But in my situation, I can't really put any directional HF antennas up where I live. I just have a couple of wire antennas, and a vertical, and so the amp really helps out in that situation. You get a good wire antenna up, get something nice, reliable that is efficient enough that you can work most stuff with 100 watts, but every now and then having a little more power is pretty handy. I think the next amp I'll have will probably be a kit-built solid-state amp. Can't remember the guy's name right now, but there's a guy that makes really nice HF solid state. He has kits for 2 meter, 440, 1.2, and everything, but he's got a really nice HF solid state amp design, and he sells you the boards and all that stuff. And I'd really like to do that. I have a lot of fun playing with transistors and RF and stuff like that. I think it's a great bunch of fun, and building it is actually almost more fun than using it. But so anyway, that's the deal, I guess, for me, and having a lot of fun. I have one suggestion for a topic for future tech forums, and that topic would be how to get your technician license. And I know it seems kind of redundant since everybody that's on the net is going to already have had their technician license, but there are lurkers, there are people listening, and people that don't have their tickets are listening. So maybe if we can talk about how we did it, it'll inspire other people to go ahead and do it, and give them a little bit of encouragement to get over the hump and not be intimidated by it. Just an idea. But anyway, that's it. Scott, back to you. Thanks for doing the forum, and I really appreciate it. Everybody have a good night. 73 AJ4TW.
All right, Cameron, that's great. That's a lot of excellent information, and sounds like you've got some experience with that amplifier yourself. Can have had to go in there and do a little bit of surgery with it. And I like your suggestion. I have it written down, so I might try to do that next week. I think that would be fun to hear everybody talk about anyway, just what drew them in and what got them going and how they studied and all that kind of stuff. So that's fantastic. Thanks a lot. Okay, let's see here. Let's see if we get any more check-ins. Cameron was the last on the list. Let's see if anybody else wants to join us tonight. Of course, if you've been listening, you've heard that our topic's amplifiers. So let's see. Anybody, anywhere, Alpha through Zulu, if you want to join us with the tech forum tonight, call forum control now to check in.
By you with a comment on that and a comment on Cameron.
All right, well, I'm not hearing any more check-ins, so, Roy, I think that means you're up. What's going on?
I agree with everything Cameron said, but when you buy an amp, you got to buy a tuner. I'd rather, when I realize people live in places that you can't have antennas, and yeah, it's good to have that little bit extra power when you got a pile up and you want to break it. I cannot argue that at all on that. But you need to have an antenna that's resonant, if possible. Like I say, you got people that live where they can't, so I'm not speaking of that. But you need to, if you're going to work 20 meters, you need to have a good antenna for 20 meters and not worry about a tuner. My 10, 15, and 20 is resonant. 40 and 80, I never work it except here in the car. So I just turn the amp on and go. And getting your tech, yes, that's good. I would like to see us put another tech class on. It is a big, big deal. I know the couple of fellows that have done it, and they've done an excellent job. And I'd like to see them come back and do it again, but from what I've heard, they don't want to, and I can understand. But it would be nice to get another class going, and also, and as you're doing the night, not bad-mouthing, don't get me wrong, I'd like to see us also kind of go back to a little bit of what I think it started 4, 5, 6 years ago. And that's what you're doing. Like I said, I'm not shooting you down, don't get me wrong. But more, a little bit more basic on some of it. Yes, you're doing good here. Yes, you've done good on everything. So like I said, I'm not, no way, shape, or form, I'm talking bad. But I'd like to see some get back to some of the new guys not being afraid to act dumb and ask a question. I've got a reputation of a lot of times asking questions that I know the answer to, but I think that they are people that don't know the answer and are ashamed to ask. But I'd like to see you go back to some of the dumb stuff that we should know. Proper way to check into a net, and as 2 or 3 people have said, listen. If you don't know it's your turn, listen, find out. Unless it is the end of the net, he's always going to come back and ask for anybody anywhere. Now, if you're short time and only got a minute, that might be a little bit different. But you need to listen, and don't just, like I do sometimes, I apologize, I do it, so I'm talking about myself. But let's get back to some of the basics. And I enjoy it. Like I say, I'm not shooting you down, Scott, no way, shape, or form. That's why I'm here. I'm listening. I enjoy it. But I like to see also that. And for BYU, I'm going to shut up.
KV4UP. Shut up, Roy. I'm tired of hearing you, man. Go back to your coffee. I'm just kidding with you. I'm not offended, man. You know, I try to, I don't know. I agree with you. I like to try to get a mix. We've done, a couple weeks ago, I don't know, maybe it's been a month ago, we did basic antennas. We've done a few other simple things, and I think it's a good idea, though, to start putting some of those simple things into the mix. I'm always looking for forum topics, so I will definitely put that in there. Maybe maybe look through the tech study guide or the tech questions and seeing if there are any kind of patterns in there we can talk about that will cover a topic, let's say. Because that would probably help a lot. And I don't want to do that every week, and maybe you can just tell me to shut up and do it anyway, because I don't want the guys who are familiar with that stuff to shut the radio off if we get too basic all the time. But yeah, I agree with you. I'm right there with you, man. We're on the same page. It sounds good. And what was the other thing you were talking about? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. In any case, let's see if anybody else wants to check in one last time before we quit for the night. If you want to check in the tech forum, call forum control now. Anybody, anywhere. Alright, nothing heard. So, that means we're done. That means we're at the end. But I really appreciate everybody's comments and everybody's thoughts on the matter. I think, it's like anything else in ham radio and any other hobby. If you're in model trains, some guys are going to think one gauge is better than the other gauge, and some guys are going to think amps are better, and some guys are going to think QRP is better, or, it's better to do moon bounce. Who knows what? But, that's what makes it so great, is you can go and read all different opinions and learn things, and there doesn't need to be any kind of animosity or anything like that. It's just everybody likes doing something different, and I love it, because if everybody did the same thing, I wouldn't have anybody to learn from. So what do you think of that? That's what I really enjoy about this forum, is being able to learn. So there you go. So I'm going to close it down for the night. Thanks for being here. We'll do it again next Sunday night. We'll do something simple. Maybe, like Cameron suggested, how to get your tech license. And then maybe we'll have a few weeks on what Roy is talking about, and some simple stuff related to that, because it would be a good follow-up to how we got our tech license, to talk about the questions and the basic stuff that he mentioned. That sounds like a good plan to me. So thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it, and we'll do it again next week, same time, same place. So for now, 73, this is KB4UP, returning the repeater to normal amateur operation. Have a great night.